Hey guys, this is Anthony Morganti from AnthonyMorganti.com. This is episode 105 of Lightroom Quick Tips. Quite often you'll find you're going to have to shoot through a window. And when you shoot through glass, you're often going to encounter a lot of different issues. In this video, I'm going to give you one tip that will help you process an image that was shot through glass. And I'm going to also offer you a few tips on how you could better actually shoot through windows and get better images. Now, before I do that, please do me a favor. I am on a quest. I want to make the best photography videos possible, and they're always going to be free. If you could help me with my quest, please look at your screen. In the top right hand corner there is an eye. Click on that eye and you could see how you could help me with this quest. Alright, so you're going to shoot through a window. I think the most prevalent problem you're going to have is reflections. Now, if you could get as close to the window as possible and wear dark clothes, that will minimize the reflections. But quite often you're going to have to be further away because maybe you're shooting a cafe or something like that, and you want to the reflections minimized so you could see the people inside the cafe. But you have to be further back so you could see the front facade of the cafe. So what you would do in that instance is try a circular polarizer. Often they'll totally eliminate the reflections in the glass, but at the very least they'll minimize them enough where you'll really have a nice image. So try a circular polarizer. Now, another issue you'll have, especially if you're shooting something like this, you're at a zoo and you're shooting through thick plexiglass, is it's hard to get tight focus. The best way to achieve the best possible focus is try to shoot straight on, straight through the glass. So have the front of your lens as close to the glass as possible and shoot straight ahead. Don't like aim up, down, left, or right. That tends to soften the focus. Also, today's lenses, most of today's lenses at least, have what they call, I guess, a petal lens hood. And when you use a petal lens hood and you're right up against the glass, particularly if there's a light above you, you'll get reflections leaking through. So what I found is these rubber collapsible lens hoods work great, and they're not very expensive, and they just screw on to the lens, so they're very easy to use, and they either expand out or collapse down so you don't vignette. And because they're round, you could put them flat up against the glass. It kind of ensures that you're shooting straight through the glass, and it's also sealed from light leaking in from the top or sides or whatever, and you'll minimize and probably eliminate the chance of any reflection. So try these out. Again, they're not very expensive, and I recently just purchased one myself, so that will really help with reflections. Now, even with that said, you'll find a situation like this. I was at the Erie Zoo in Erie, Pennsylvania, and I was photographing the orangutans, and as I recall, the enclosure had a skylight up above, and to my right, the orangutan's left, there was a window. And the way the sun was that particular hour, it was coming in that window in the skylight and it was raking across the glass. So it made the image very hazy. So what do? How do you deal with this? Well, if you have Lightroom CC, I've mentioned many times I'm not a big fan of the dehaze slider in Lightroom CC, but in this instance it works great. So go to the Effects tab and down to the dehaze slider and just move it to the right, and you can see it did a great job. I'm really impressed with how well it works for this type of situation. I'm not so impressed with it when it works for actual haze in a landscape image or something like that. But try that out. Now, for those of you that don't have Lightroom CC, you might be using an earlier version of Lightroom or Lightroom 6 and it doesn't have that slider. Well, you could still deal with this. What you should do is go to the tone curve, and a lot of people don't realize this. There's actually two different curves inside of the tone curve tab. Right now we're looking at the point curve. To get the other curve, if you go over here in the lower right hand corner and you click on this little diagram, you'll access the region curve, and the region curve has these four sliders. And what you need to do is move these sliders around, and it's very easy. What I found is for most images, all you really have to do is move the highlights and the shadow slider. This specific image is really bad, so we're going to have to probably do a little more for this. But what you want to do is go to the highlights slider and move it to the right, and go to the shadows slider and move it to the left. Now, if the image isn't hazed over that badly, you probably don't have to move either of these very far. Now in this case, this image is really bad, so I'm going to max out shadows to -100. And it's still a little hazy, so I'm going to go to the dark slider and move that to the left as well. And you could see that it's really cutting through the haze. And you could move the highlights and lights also. And if you wanted to spend some time and move these sliders around, I'm sure you could probably achieve just as good an effect that those who use Lightroom CC did by using the dehaze slider. So check that out. Now once you do that, either with the dehaze slider or with the region curve, then you're done with that. You could go to your basic panel and you could just process the image as you normally would. And I'm not going to go through the processing, but you could then just process it as you normally would. And you should be able to salvage a decent image from a shot that looked like it was just totally washed out, like you wouldn't be able to do anything with it. So that's it for episode 105. I hope that taught you something you didn't know. Thank you, everyone that watches my videos. I truly do appreciate it. I'll talk to you guys soon.